If you don't define where you're going, you'll never get anywhere. People wander through life aimlessly, hoping that things will just fall into place, that success will somehow happen to them. But that's not how it works. You don't just stumble into a meaningful life. You build it deliberately, brick by brick. And the first step in that process is defining exactly what you want. Because if you don't know what you want, how can you possibly get it? Think about it this way. Imagine you're in a vast open ocean. No map, no compass, no destination in mind. You're just drifting, hoping that the tides will take you somewhere good. That's how most people live. They wake up, go through the motions, and hope that somehow, someday, everything will magically get better. But without a direction, you're just floating. And if you float for too long, you drown. Now, imagine something different. Imagine you have a clear destination, an island you know exists. You plot a course, you adjust for the waves and the storms, but you stay aimed at that island. Now, every day, every action, every decision is part of a purposeful journey. You may not reach it immediately, but you're always moving forward, always making progress. That's what happens when you define your future clearly. So what do you want? Not vaguely, not in meaningless cliches like I want to be successful or I just want to be happy. That's not specific enough. What does success look like for you? What does happiness mean? You need a concrete vision. Close your eyes and picture yourself 1 year from now. What do you see? Where are you living? Who is around you? What kind of work are you doing? How do you feel when you wake up in the morning? What skills have you developed? What challenges have you overcome? If you can't visualize it, you can't build it. Write it down. There's something powerful about putting your goals on paper. It forces clarity. It takes your vague hopes and turns them into something real, something tangible. And be as detailed as possible. If your goal is to improve your career, don't just write, I want a better job. Right, in 1 year, I will be working as a software developer at a top tech company, earning $100,000 a year with a deep expertise in coding and strong leadership skills. If your goal is to get in shape, don't just say, I want to be fit. Say, in 1 year, I will weigh 170 pounds, have a body fat percentage of 12%, and be able to run 5 miles without stopping. Specificity matters because the brain works best when it has clear targets. If your goal is vague, your progress will be vague. If your goal is specific, your actions become measurable. You'll know exactly whether you're moving toward or away from it. And that's critical because without measurement, there's no accountability. Now, once you've defined your ideal future, ask yourself, why does this matter? It's not enough to just list goals. You need deep, compelling reasons behind them. Because when things get hard, and they will, you need something powerful to keep you going. If your only reason is because it would be nice, you'll quit the moment things get uncomfortable. But if your reason is something real, something personal, something urgent, then you'll push through. Maybe you want to succeed because you refuse to live a mediocre life like the people around you. Maybe you want financial freedom because you never want your family to struggle the way they did when you were young. Maybe you want to get stronger because you're sick of feeling weak, sick of being overlooked. Whatever it is, find the emotional core of your ambition and anchor yourself to it. And here's the next step. You have to believe that it's possible. Many people sabotage themselves before they even start. They think, well, I'd love to be successful, but I don't think I'm capable of it. Or, sure, getting in shape sounds great, but I've failed too many times before. That kind of thinking is poison. If you don't believe, you'll hesitate, you'll half try, and half trying leads to failure. Instead, you have to look at your vision and say, this is absolutely possible and I will make it happen. And if you can't say that honestly, then break it down into smaller steps until you can. Maybe your ultimate dream is to build a $1 million business, but that feels too big right now. Fine. Then focus on making your first $10,000, then $100,000. Success happens in increments. No one climbs a mountain in one leap. They do it step by step. Finally, make a commitment, not a half-hearted, I'll try my best kind of commitment, a real one, a no matter what commitment, the kind where failure is not an option. Tell yourself, I will not let another year pass where I remain the same. I will take control, I will define my future, and I will make it happen. Because if you don't, what's the alternative? Another year of stagnation, another year of drifting, another year of looking at other people who built great lives and wondering why you didn't? No, that's not acceptable. Define your future, set your course, and take the first step today. You are not just the sum of your strengths. You are also the weight of your worst habits. These habits silently drag you down, keeping you from becoming the person you could be. People like to focus on adding good things to their lives, more success, better health, improved relationships, but they rarely stop to consider the things that are actively destroying them. And that's a mistake, because before you build, you need to clear out the rot. Imagine trying to fill a cup with fresh water when it's already full of poison. It doesn't matter how much clean water you pour in, it's still contaminated. That's what bad habits do. You can set goals, make plans, and dream big, but if you're still engaging in self-destructive behaviors, they will sabotage everything you try to achieve. The first step in fixing this is brutal honesty. Most people don't like to confront their own flaws. They distract themselves, make excuses, or pretend their bad habits aren't that bad. But you can't afford that kind of self-deception. If you want to improve, you need to take a hard look at yourself and ask, what am I doing every day that is making my life worse? Maybe you waste hours on social media, scrolling endlessly while your dreams gather dust. Maybe you procrastinate important tasks until they become emergencies, adding unnecessary stress to your life. Maybe you avoid difficult conversations, choosing short-term comfort over long-term growth. Or maybe you have deeper, more destructive habits. Overeating, drinking too much, gambling, lying to yourself and others. Whatever it is, identify it. And don't just stop at the habit itself. Go deeper. Why are you doing it? Most bad habits aren't random. They serve a purpose, even if it's a destructive one. Maybe you procrastinate because deep down you're afraid of failure. If you never fully try, you never have to fully fail. Maybe you waste time on distractions because facing reality feels overwhelming. Maybe you drink too much because it numbs something painful you don't want to deal with. If you don't understand the why behind your bad habits, you'll never fix them. You'll just swap one destructive behavior for another. That's why self-reflection is crucial. Take a notebook, sit in silence, and write down every habit that's holding you back. Be detailed, be ruthless. Then, next to each habit, write down exactly how it's damaging your life. If you don't confront the cost of your actions, you won't feel the urgency to change. Now let's talk about how to actually get rid of these habits. You can't just wish them away. Bad habits have been reinforced over years, sometimes decades. They have roots in your psychology, your routines, your environment. You have to attack them strategically. One of the best ways to break a bad habit is to replace it with a better one. The brain doesn't like empty spaces. If you just stop doing something without filling that gap, you'll relapse. So if your problem is spending too much time on your phone, don't just say, I'll stop scrolling. Instead, set a rule. Whenever I feel the urge to check my phone, I'll read one page of a book instead. If you eat junk food when you're stressed, don't just try to resist it. Find a healthier way to manage stress, like exercise or journaling. Another powerful tool is changing your environment. People underestimate how much their surroundings influence their behavior. If you keep junk food in your house, you will eat it. If your phone is next to your bed, you will waste time on it. If your workspace is cluttered, you will struggle to focus. So design your environment to make bad habits harder and good habits easier. Delete social media apps if they're a distraction. Put your running shoes by the door so you're reminded to exercise. Make temptations inconvenient and discipline effortless. Then there's accountability. It's easy to lie to yourself, but it's much harder to lie to others. Tell someone you trust about the habit you're trying to break. Better yet, ask them to check in on you regularly. If you're serious, you can even set up consequences. Give a friend money and tell them they can only return it if you stick to your plan. Painful consequences are an excellent motivator. But here's the truth. Even with all these strategies, you will slip up. That's normal. Breaking bad habits isn't a straight line. It's a fight. The key is to not let one failure turn into total collapse. If you mess up, don't spiral into guilt or self-pity. Just correct course immediately. The longer you let a bad habit continue, the deeper its roots grow. Cut it off the moment you catch yourself slipping. And don't just focus on the struggle of quitting, focus on the freedom you gain. When you remove toxic habits from your life, you create space for greatness. Imagine waking up every day without guilt, without regret, without wasted potential dragging you down. Imagine how much energy you would have if you weren't numbing yourself with distractions and self-sabotage. Imagine how much further you could go if you weren't constantly weighed down by your own worst behaviors. This is not a small thing. This is the foundation of everything. If you don't remove your worst habits, your best efforts will always be undermined. You will always be at war with yourself. But if you take responsibility, if you confront your own weaknesses and actively work to eliminate them, you become dangerous. You become a force to be reckoned with. So don't wait. Identify your worst habits now. Write them down, analyze them, attack them with a plan, and refuse to let them control you for one more day. Because the sooner you cut them out, the sooner you start building the life you actually want. People fail to achieve their goals not because they lack ambition, but because they don't know how to break things down into manageable steps. They set massive, overwhelming targets, get inspired for a short while, and then collapse under the weight of their own expectations. They expect to wake up one day and suddenly have the discipline, energy, and skills to make their dream life happen all at once. But life doesn't work that way. Growth doesn't happen in leaps. It happens in small, consistent steps. Think about climbing a mountain. If you look at the peak from the base, it seems impossibly high. The air is thin up there, the path is dangerous, and the climb will take days or weeks. If you try to sprint to the top in one go, you'll burn out and collapse. But if you break the journey down into small, realistic steps, reach this checkpoint, then that one, take one more step, then another, you can go farther than you ever imagined. That's how success works. The key is reducing big goals into small daily actions. Let's say your goal is to get in shape. Most people make the mistake of saying, I want to lose 50 pounds or I want to get ripped. That's fine as a long-term vision, but it's useless as a daily plan. What does getting in shape look like today? Does it mean running for 10 minutes, doing 20 push-ups, cutting out soda? You need to get specific. If you can't answer the question, what's one small thing I can do today, then your goal is still too vague. It's the same with anything. If you want to write a book, don't say, I need to write 300 pages. Say, I need to write 500 words today. If you want to build a business, don't say, I need to make 6 figures this year. Say, I need to reach out to 5 potential clients this week. When you break things down, your brain stops panicking. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, you feel in control. Another reason people fail is that they expect results too soon. They put in effort for a few days, don't see immediate progress, and give up. But every meaningful achievement follows a simple pattern: invisible progress, then exponential growth. The early stages feel frustrating because you don't see big changes. You go to the gym for a week and your body looks the same. You study a new language for a month and you still struggle to form sentences. It's easy to think this isn't working, but what you don't see is the foundation being built beneath the surface. The moment when progress explodes always comes later, but only if you stick with the process long enough. This is why you must focus on habits, not just outcomes. If your identity becomes I am someone who exercises daily, the results will come naturally over time. If you become a person who writes every morning, you will eventually finish your book. You don't need to obsess over reaching the peak. You just need to make sure you're always moving forward. A useful trick to ensure progress is the 2-minute rule. If a goal feels too big, shrink it down until it's impossible to fail. Want to start reading more? Commit to reading just 1 paragraph a day. Want to start meditating? Do it for 1 minute. The idea is simple. Once you start, momentum builds. It's much easier to go from 2 minutes to 20 than from 0 to 20. The hardest part is always beginning. And breaking a task down removes that resistance. There's also the power of tracking your progress. If you're serious about improvement, you need to measure what you're doing. Keep a notebook or use an app to track how often you stick to your daily actions. Seeing your progress visually keeps you motivated. It turns your effort into something real, something tangible, and if you notice you're slipping, it forces you to correct course before you lose momentum. But even with all this, there will be bad days. Days when you don't feel like doing anything, when you're tired, stressed, or unmotivated. And that's where most people fail. They let one bad day turn into a bad week, then a bad month. The solution is simple. Never miss twice in a row. If you break your habit one day, get back on track the next. One mistake is nothing. A pattern of mistakes is a disaster. Ultimately, the question isn't, can I succeed? It's, am I willing to break things down until success is inevitable? If you reduce your goals into small, manageable steps, track your habits, and stay consistent, there is no limit to what you can achieve. You don't have to be the best today. You just have to be better than yesterday. And if you do that day after day, you will wake up 1 year from now transformed. Without structure, life becomes chaos. People drift aimlessly, reacting to whatever comes their way instead of taking deliberate action. They set goals, but they never follow through. They make plans, but they don't stick to them. They have dreams, but those dreams remain distant because they lack the foundation to turn them into reality. Success is not about motivation. It's about structure. If you have the right structure in place, success becomes inevitable. If you don't, even the best intentions will crumble under pressure. Think about a building. No matter how beautiful the design is, it cannot stand without a solid foundation. If the foundation is weak, cracks will form, walls will collapse, and eventually the entire structure will fall apart. This applies to your life as well. Without a strong foundation, no amount of ambition will hold up under stress. The key to real progress is building a structure that supports your goals, your habits, and your daily actions. The first step in creating structure is defining clear priorities. Most people don't fail because they are incapable. They fail because they spread their energy too thin. They try to do too much at once, jumping between tasks without a clear sense of direction. To build a strong structure for your life, you need to ask yourself, what truly matters? What are the 3 to 5 things that will have the biggest impact on your future? Once you define those priorities, everything else must revolve around them. If something doesn't align with your priorities, it's a distraction. Once your priorities are clear, the next step is creating a system. A system is a repeatable set of actions that move you toward your goals. If you rely on motivation, you'll fail because motivation is unreliable. Some days you'll feel inspired, but other days you won't. That's why you need a structure that keeps you on track no matter how you feel. For example, if your priority is improving your health, your system might be meal prepping on Sundays, working out at the same time every day, and tracking your calories. If your priority is building a business, your system might be setting aside 3 hours every morning to focus on deep work, making 5 outreach calls a day, and reviewing your progress every week. Structure takes the guesswork out of success. Instead of waking up and wondering what to do, you follow a clear plan. The most powerful way to reinforce structure is through routines. Your daily habits shape your future more than anything else. What you do every day determines who you become. That's why the most successful people in the world rely on routines. They don't leave things to chance. Your morning routine sets the tone for your entire day. If you start your day scrolling through social media and procrastinating, you're already in a reactive state. But if your morning begins with something productive, exercise, reading, journaling, planning your top priorities, you enter the day with a sense of control. The same applies to your evening routine. Ending the day with reflection, reviewing your goals, and planning for tomorrow ensures that you wake up with clarity and purpose. Another critical part of structure is time management. People constantly say, I don't have enough time, but that's rarely true. The real issue is that they don't use their time effectively. If you track your hours, you'll likely find that you waste enormous amounts of time on distractions. Endless scrolling, mindless entertainment, pointless conversations. The solution, one of the best ways to structure your time, is time blocking, assigning specific hours for deep work, learning, relaxation, and other priorities. When something is scheduled, it gets done. If it's left open-ended, it gets pushed aside. Treat your time with the same respect you would treat an important business meeting. If you say you're going to work on a project from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., treat that as a non-negotiable appointment. But even with the best structure, obstacles will come. That's why you need built-in flexibility. A rigid system will break under pressure, but a strong structure allows for adjustments without falling apart. If an unexpected event disrupts your schedule, don't let it throw off your entire day. Instead, have contingency plans. If you miss a workout in the morning, do it in the evening. If a meeting runs long, shift your next task instead of abandoning it completely. The key is staying adaptable without losing direction. Accountability is another pillar of structure. If you have no accountability, it's easy to let things slide. But when you track your progress and have external accountability, whether through a coach, a mentor, or even just a friend who checks in on you, you are far more likely to stay consistent. Set up systems that force you to stay on track. If your goal is to write a book, commit to sending a chapter to someone every week. If your goal is to save money, set up automatic transfers so you don't have to rely on willpower. The more structured your accountability system is, the less room there is for excuses. Lastly, a strong structure includes regular reflection and refinement. What works today may not work 6 months from now. That's why you need to review your systems and routines regularly. Ask yourself, is my current structure moving me closer to my goals? If something isn't working, adjust it. Eliminate what isn't serving you and double down on what is. Progress is not about sticking to a rigid plan. It's about constant refinement. Building structure is not about limiting your freedom. In fact, the opposite is true. The more structured your life is, the more freedom you actually gain. When you have systems in place, you don't waste time wondering what to do. When your schedule is intentional, you don't feel overwhelmed by distractions. When your habits are aligned with your goals, success becomes a natural outcome rather than a struggle. Most people drift through life, reacting instead of creating. But you don't have to be like most people. You can take control. You can design a structure that makes success inevitable. And once you do, everything else falls into place. So start today. Define your priorities, build your systems, establish your routines, and take full ownership of your time. Because a well-structured life is a life that leads to greatness. Most people avoid the hardest thing in their lives because it makes them uncomfortable. They put it off, distract themselves, and hope it will go away, but it never does. It sits there, growing in the background, making everything else feel heavier. The longer they avoid it, the more power it gains over them. It starts to dominate their thoughts, creating stress, anxiety, and guilt, and yet instead of facing it head on, they continue to run from it, choosing short-term relief over long-term progress. This is a mistake. If you want to improve your life, You must develop the ability to face the hardest thing first. Whatever is weighing you down, whether it's a difficult conversation, a major life decision, a personal weakness, or an overwhelming task, you have to confront it as soon as possible, because the sooner you face it, the sooner you take back control. Think about a normal day. Most people begin by doing the easy things first. They check their messages, scroll through social media, respond to emails, and engage in small, low-effort tasks. By the time they get to the real challenge, the thing that actually matters, they are already mentally drained. They have used up their best energy on things that don't move them forward. As a result, they either procrastinate or do the hard task with half their effort, producing mediocre results. This cycle repeats every day, and before they know it, weeks, months, or even years have passed without real progress. Now imagine doing the opposite. Imagine waking up and tackling the hardest thing first. Imagine setting aside everything else and focusing all your energy on the most important challenge of the day. Instead of spending hours in avoidance, you take action immediately. You rip off the bandage, you push through the discomfort, and when it's done, you experience relief, momentum, and confidence. The rest of your day feels lighter because you have already conquered the most difficult part. This principle applies to every area of life. If you have a tough conversation you've been avoiding, have it first thing in the morning. If you have a major project that overwhelms you, work on it before anything else. If you struggle with self-discipline, force yourself to do the hardest task before you do anything enjoyable. The more you make this a habit, the more resilient and capable you become. One of the reasons people avoid hard things is because they magnify the difficulty in their minds. They build it up to be something far worse than it actually is. They imagine failure, embarrassment, pain, and discomfort. But when they finally face it, they realize it was never as bad as they thought. The problem wasn't the task, it was their fear of the task. And fear grows stronger the longer you avoid it. A simple way to break this cycle is to use the 5-minute rule. When you feel resistance toward a hard task, tell yourself you will work on it for just 5 minutes. This eliminates the pressure of completing the whole thing and shifts your focus to simply starting. Once you begin, momentum takes over, and you often end up finishing more than you expected. The hardest part is not the work itself, it's getting yourself to start. Another powerful approach is to reframe the challenge. Instead of seeing the hard thing as a burden, view it as an opportunity. Every difficult task you complete makes you stronger, more capable, and more disciplined. Every obstacle you overcome increases your confidence. The people who achieve great things in life are not the ones who avoid hardship. They are the ones who seek it out, embrace it, and push through it. It's also important to recognize that doing the hardest thing first creates a ripple effect. When you begin your day with something challenging, everything else feels easier by comparison. Your productivity skyrockets because your mind is no longer weighed down by avoidance and stress. Your self-respect grows because you prove to yourself that you can handle discomfort. You become the kind of person who takes action instead of making excuses. But what if you fail? That's what most people fear the most. They avoid hard things because they don't want to face the possibility of failure. But failure is part of the process. Every time you attempt something difficult, you gain experience. Even if you don't succeed, you learn, adapt, and improve. The only real failure is refusing to try. If you commit to facing the hardest thing first every day, your ability to handle adversity will increase dramatically. Over time, you will develop the kind of mental toughness that allows you to take on challenges that would have once paralyzed you with fear. The reality is, life will never be free of difficulties. You will always have hard things to face. The question is not whether they will appear, it's whether you will confront them or let them control you. If you choose to face them first, you gain the upper hand. You stop living in avoidance and you start moving forward. And the more you do this, the more unstoppable you become. So what is the hardest thing you need to face today? Identify it, do it first, Don't think about it. Don't overanalyze it. Just take action, because once you do, everything else will become easier and you will finally break free from the weight of avoidance. Most people set goals and work toward them, but very few actually track their progress. They rely on vague feelings to determine whether they are improving, and as a result, they often feel stuck, frustrated, or lost. They wonder why their efforts don't seem to be paying off, but the truth is, they simply don't have a clear way to measure their growth. If you don't track your progress, you have no way of knowing whether you are moving forward, standing still, or even slipping backward. Without measurement, motivation fades, discipline weakens, and success remains out of reach. Tracking progress is essential because it makes success tangible. It turns vague aspirations into something concrete. If you're trying to lose weight but never step on a scale or take measurements, you might feel like nothing is changing, even when it is. If you're trying to improve your financial situation but never check your bank account or track your spending, you might believe you're making progress when you're actually falling into deeper debt. If you're working toward a career goal but never track your skills, accomplishments, or setbacks, you won't recognize how far you've come. One of the biggest reasons people give up on their goals is that they don't see immediate results. They put in effort for a few days or weeks, expect drastic changes, and when they don't see them, they lose motivation. But progress doesn't happen in obvious leaps. It happens gradually. And if you don't track small improvements, you'll miss them. A person who lifts weights for a month might feel like they're not getting stronger, but if they track their workouts, they'll see they are lifting heavier than they did before. A writer might feel like they're not making progress, but if they look back at the word count they've accumulated over time, they'll see they are, in fact, moving forward. The first step in tracking progress is choosing measurable indicators. If you want to improve your fitness, track your weight, body fat percentage, strength levels, or endurance. If you want to become more productive, track how many focused hours you work each day or how many important tasks you complete. If you want to improve a skill, track how much time you spend practicing and measure key milestones along the way. The more specific your tracking method, the more clarity you will gain. Another powerful way to track progress is keeping a journal. Writing down what you do each day gives you a record of your efforts and allows you to reflect on what's working and what's not. When you write about your struggles, you start seeing patterns in your behavior. You might notice that you lose focus at a certain time of day or that certain distractions keep pulling you off track. By identifying these patterns, you can adjust your approach and eliminate obstacles. A journal also serves as a reminder of how far you've come. On days when you feel stuck, you can look back at past entries and see how much you've improved. One of the simplest yet most effective tracking methods is the habit tracker. This is a system where you mark down each time you successfully complete a habit or task. It could be as simple as checking a box on a calendar or using an app to log your progress. The reason this works so well is that it creates a visual representation of your consistency. When you see a streak forming, days or weeks in a row of taking action, you become motivated to keep it going. And when you miss a day, it becomes obvious, making it easier to get back on track before the habit slips away. Another essential part of tracking progress is regular review. Simply collecting data is not enough. You have to analyze it, set aside time every week or month to look at your progress and ask yourself key questions. Am I improving? What's working well? What's holding me back? What adjustments do I need to make? If you don't review your progress, you risk wasting time on ineffective strategies. Reviewing allows you to refine your approach and make sure you're on the right path. One thing to be cautious of when tracking progress is not to get discouraged by small fluctuations. Progress is rarely a straight line. Some days you will move forward, other days you might feel like you're slipping back. Normal. The key is to focus on the overall trend. If you zoom in on a single day, it might look like you're not getting anywhere, but if you zoom out and look at a month or a year, you'll see steady improvement. Another important aspect of tracking progress is accountability. When you track your progress, publicly or share it with someone else, you create an extra layer of motivation. If you tell a friend, mentor, or coach about your goals and update them on your progress, you are far more likely to stay committed. Accountability forces you to stay honest with yourself. If you know someone will check in on you, you'll be less likely to slack off or make excuses. Finally, celebrating small wins is a crucial part of the tracking process. Many people make the mistake of waiting until they reach their ultimate goal to feel proud of themselves. But long-term success is built on small victories. Every milestone, no matter how small, is a step forward. If you only focus on how far you have left to go, you will always feel behind. But if you take the time to recognize and appreciate your progress, you will stay motivated and engaged. The simple truth is this: what gets measured gets improved. If you track your progress, you gain clarity, motivation, and a sense of control over your journey. You stop relying on guesswork and start making informed decisions. You can see what's working, adjust what isn't, and stay on course even when motivation fades. So, whatever goal you are working toward, start tracking it today. Choose a method that works for you, whether it's a habit tracker, a journal, a spreadsheet, or an app. Make tracking a daily habit. Review your progress regularly, adjust your approach